Hi there, Lawrence Allam here from STORYE Content, and in this video we're going to look at 5 tips for creating engaging B2B content. So we're going to cover 5 key topics. We're going to look at knowing your audience, crafting compelling storytelling, optimizing video length and format, creating high quality videos, leveraging calls to actions, and then your actual conclusions and calls to action. So I've got a few notes here, so excuse me for reading a bit, but I just want to make sure we get it all in there, and so we can actually provide you with the most value. All right, so let's give you a bit of a background on STORYE Content and why we exist. So realistically, the video world, or I should say the marketing world, has progressively moved more towards quicker content. I think historically we would get really high quality corporate videos done a couple of times a year or once a year, or get a couple of them done, and that was kind of all we did for a year from a video content perspective for B2B services. However, that's kind of moved a lot now, and that's because our customers' expectations have changed in terms of what it is that they're looking for, what it is they want, and how they interact with brands. We've got to remember this is really why audiences, or how audiences frame brands themselves. It's based on the interactions that they have with brands. So we have to create compelling content, that they see often, see the brand being reinforced again and again, values, those sorts of things. So there really is a really, a really high value need for video marketing in terms of what it does on social and how it gets people to view your brands. And it really doesn't matter so much what we ourselves think about our brands, products and services. It's what our clients think, because they're the ones that are forming their opinions about our brands. And of course, video plays a really integral part in getting the kind of key messages out there, and also being able to reinforce what is currently out there. Audiences don't need to necessarily view every single video or see every single post that you're putting out there. Typically it is more of a model whereby they're looking in their feed, so it's non-sequential. So they'll be seeing your content appearing more regularly, but it might be out of order. So we don't necessarily need to create a huge narrative that runs through, but we do want in any one given month to have a key theme. So we're constantly posting about the right things, so people can kind of get a feel for what it is we're trying to say, whether they watch 5 videos, 20 videos, or only one video. And it kind of helps to provide a little bit of continuity for us as well in terms of what we're trying to produce. So on the one hand, then you have this high value content, and on the other hand, you have this more influencer style where people are kind of, self-filming themselves on their phone and doing stories and reels and lives, all those sorts of things. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that for B2B services organizations, we kind of need to fall somewhere in the middle. And I think for a lot of organizations, typically because we're professionals, we're engineers, recruiters, management consultants, accountants, whatever, it means that we're having to actually spend time with our clients, win work, and actually produce work at the same time as well. So sometimes we need help in terms of coming up with the ideas, filming, production, etc. So that's where STORYE comes in. That we're trying to hit right down the middle. So on the one hand, self-service, on the other hand, high value. We want to go in the middle, and that's because what we've recognized is that this kind of quick quality term that we've coined for our content is really all about 72-hour shelf life content. So it's this content that we can produce, get online. It has a couple of days shelf life, and then it moves on because we're constantly putting posts behind it. There's more and more posts coming behind, each and every post. Because, like I said at the beginning, we've got this constant feed that we're trying to produce for our audiences, so they're constantly seeing our brands, our products, our services, our messaging, etc. So that's a really important part. It's not so much about producing super high quality, but we do need to go a bit higher than kind of self-filmed, kind of selfie videos. We want to get somewhere in the middle, and that's really why we created STORYE. So, okay, so the first point we want to talk about, know your audience. So audiences are all going to react to content in different ways, and depending on what we say, keywords, key messages. So we can't just run into video and film things. Well, we can, I suppose, to a degree. Like if we really know our audience and we know who we're going after, we should intrinsically know what sort of things they want to know. But also we want to plan at the front end. So something that we do at Content is we create content schedules, so we know exactly what we're saying in each video, what the theme for the month is, how that breaks down into individual weeks. So we can kind of have a rolling flow of information that's basically important to our audiences. There's no point producing stuff that we feel is important. It's got to relate to our audience themselves. So that's the first thing. We need to really understand the audience and understand what it is that they really want to know about. So a couple of tips in producing kind of engaging content for the audience is have a look about what other people are producing, in the market. Have a look for specific kind of industry related information. Look at what newspapers are putting out there. What's happening from an economics point of view. What's happening from a point of view of what's happening in the clients or the audience's actual lives, and we can relate to them that way. We can also use some AI tools. I've made a vlog as well about AI and how that's changing marketing. But we can use ChatGTP and other tools as well to kind of get a feel for what's trending. We can also use Google. We can use Facebook Insights. There's a whole raft of different tools that we can use to actually come up with ideas on what to post when we're trying to talk to our audiences. The next thing we've got to do is create compelling storytelling. So when we're talking about the sorts of videos that we're creating, this idea of quick quality, and I'll come on to the format and the length of video, but they are generally quite short. So it's difficult to get a view of, well, let's take, kind of just random topics, and film them and post them. I've seen people do that. It's not that it doesn't work. It's just that it's hard then to get a stream going in terms of what you're trying to say. What we tend to do at Story is we come up with, for our schedules, a theme for that month. So that might be, for example, let's say AI. Week 1, we're going to talk about then AI in marketing. Number 2, or week 2, I should say, we're going to talk about all the different tools that might be available. Week 3, how businesses can integrate those tools, and 4, what's coming next. And then within each of those weeks, we'd break that down into how many posts we want to post, etc. And we would create one long video, a little bit like this, asking questions to our clients, kind of coming up with the whole narrative, including kind of incorporating their key messages, etc. And then we'll take that film and break it down into smaller videos, and also pull out the key information and put them into more static posts. So quotes that come out that are really interesting, any backup research that people might have mentioned, sharing relevant, I should say, information to your audience, etc. So coming up with that narrative, that storytelling piece, piecing it all together with articles from external, quotes, plus the videos, etc., can create that really compelling month-on-month narrative. So, but from a storytelling point of view, how does that work? Because like I said earlier, if it's coming up in someone's feed and they're just seeing things periodically, they're not going to get that whole messaging. That's very true. So there are a couple of ways that we can navigate that. So number 1, we can actually go and do something like email marketing. So we can take all that content that we're creating, reuse it, reformulate it, and get it into email marketing so we can push our audiences to that. But it still requires them to click on that. It still requires us to have the email. It's not passive like social media marketing is. So we can go back into social media and we can repost. The other thing we can do is we can actually run shares and likes campaigns, so we can get people to try and interact directly with our with content, whether it be ours or our clients. And the other thing we can really do is try and get people to our social media pages as well, and look at it from a curated point of view. Now, the one thing we need to do there from a curation perspective is be careful that not everything looks the same. So this is one of the reasons why we push very much content diversity when it comes to social media marketing. We just don't want to do the same looking video that's got the same kind of thumbnail, the same intro again and again and again. Otherwise, if someone comes to your social media page, all they'll see is this raft of information that looks exactly the same. Like, there's nothing eye-catching there. How do they pick something? Like, we know this when we go to pick a bottle of wine or something at a supermarket or whatever, we generally search with our eyes first, right? We get drawn to labeling, we get drawn to bottle or container shape, etc. And so we kind of take those cues very, very much in there. The same is true from a social media content perspective. Like, we're going to look at thumbnails, we're going to look at titles, we're going to look at plays. How are we reading what's on there? And social media is doing a really good job these days as well of helping to create curate these things, so you can click on static posts, videos, whatever, and so people can kind of look for what it is they're trying to find. So we've got to be conscious of that, and we have to try and create that content so it does then tell that story, but in a diverse way. So it does provide a little bit of variety when they come to an individual page. So I think the key things, I think a lot of people, when they talk about storytelling, will talk about emotives or trying to build emotion in your storytelling. I'm not sure that's necessarily really applicable for every single B2B service. Sometimes we're just trying to tell our clients around a specific piece of tax law that might change, or we might be saying about what happens from a recruiting perspective at the beginning of a financial year, or whatever it might be. So we might be trying to get that kind of information out there. It's not necessarily emotive. It's not like we're trying to sell house insurance, or I should say home insurance, whereby we're playing very much on people's fears or risks in their own head around what happens if something happens to my family. So we're not necessarily doing that, but we can use a lot around intellect. So we're trying to say, well, what in those themes, trying to create a compelling stream of information that also ties in with key messages that our clients want to put forward to audiences. And as professionals in B2B services organizations, those will typically be things that will resonate with clients, and it might be things they don't know about. They need to get in. They need to understand from their own peace of mind as well. All right, so I mentioned length and format. So this is a really tricky one, because if you're producing one piece of content, say a video like this, and you're trying to produce it for multiple different social media platforms and multiple different types of content within those platforms, it can be really tricky. So for example, you produce something like this, it's in landscape, it's on YouTube, and then you want to get it onto Instagram stories. Then that moves from being landscape to being portrait, and it can only be a minute long. And how do you get those key messages out there? How do you punch those kind of the key points you're trying to get across? Not only because the fact it's so much shorter, but also because it's it's in a different format. You have to condense the main information, so you have to cut a lot out. So we use a few different tips and tricks. We can use pull-out text. So when you're talking, all of a sudden the words appear on screen. We can use different types of captions as well. So the typical ones at the bottom of the screens, we have them in the top screens, we have them in different colors, pointing things out, etc. So there's different tricks that we can use. But typically what we tend to say is we want videos to be no more than 2.5 minutes. And that's because that's what most of the social media platforms tell us. That's really the reason why. So from their point of view, people watch shorter videos. So if you put up 6 or 12 or 20-minute videos, and this one will be a longer one, the likelihood of someone just on the bus flicking through their phone and actually stopping on it and looking at it for the whole time, is a lot lower. So we want to produce like really short content. However, that doesn't mean we can't take longer videos like this that have a broad structure and have a narrative that run through them, and break them down into shorter videos that then push people to these longer videos. That's obviously something that we can do. So format will depend on what you're trying to produce. It's slightly different specs on the different meta platforms, to LinkedIn, to TikTok, and to other platforms as well. And then within each individual platform, the different types of posts are different as well. So let's just take Facebook, for example. If you're putting on a normal post, you can post like this in a widescreen format or a landscape format. However, on a phone, it'll be better to be a portrait. And if you're doing reels or stories, it needs to be in portrait as well. And if you're doing stories, it can only be a specific length of time, although you can go for longer periods of time, of course. However, we need you then need to load it up in different ways. So the formatting is really important there. So you need to kind of understand what it is you're trying to do. The short videos, the stories, the reels, the YouTube shorts, etc., they're a fantastic tool to use to get people, to drive people to longer content. So sometimes when we're talking about a campaign, we may only do 10 pieces of original content. But then what we do is we create lots of shorter videos that drive people to those longer pieces of content because we're trying to get like a longer, more complex message out there. So it depends on what you're trying to produce. But ultimately, with working with someone like Story, we'll be able to advise you on whatever it is that you're trying to do. If you're not sure, what I would say is simplify, and you're doing it yourself, simplify your own thinking. Think about, well, what is it you're trying to get across? Pick a platform, get really used to that one first, and then every month or two, start adding a new dimension to that. And over a period of a year, you'll build up a really good knowledge of, one, what works for you, and two, the different types of formats, etc. But it can be very tricky. And one great way around this kind of problem is AI tools. There are a variety of AI tools that you can actually plug content straight into, and it will reorientate them depending on where you're trying to push it. And sometimes it's not necessarily all AI tools. It can be scheduling tools as well, or automation tools. So things like I think there's Workerbee. There's also Sprout Digital. There's a few different tools that you can use that will actually upload information for you, and you just basically check where you want to load it up to, and it will automatically load it up in the right format. Hootsuite's another one as well. So that covers off optimizing video length and format. The next one is high quality video. So I think really gone are the days where you want to have a shaky cam phone. I think it's fine if you're an influencer and it's really about just people interacting with your lives. But if you're a corporate, I think you do need sort of somewhat higher quality. But again, coming back to that beginning point, do you want to go to those kind of $5,000-$6,000 corporate videos where you get one or two cuts of it and that's all you get? Probably not. I think there is somewhere in the middle, and I think that's what we're trying to do. So it's about trying to bring a different level of production value there. And I mentioned that very specifically, production value, because that can sometimes be that quality part that many videos are missing. So if you film something yourself, yes, you can use Canva and things like that to put on intros and outros and transitions, and you can cut little bits out if you've made mistakes. And you can see here, I've made a few mistakes in this video, but I'm not going to go back and change them because that's just part of the dialogue, right? You make mistakes when you talk. It happens. But when it comes to these shorter videos, you can actually obviously edit those out if you need to. Now, the problem with tools like Canva is they're not really design tools, because they can't make them super complicated, as not everyone who uses Canva is a designer. In fact, very few people are designers. So they need to make it really simple. So they take out a lot of functionality that you would get in something like the Adobe video suite. So things like Premiere Pro, After Effects, and those kind of programs, which are really complicated to use. And you actually need to be like a producer to understand that. To understand how to use them. So you can use tools like Canva, but it's going to be very limiting. So what I'm saying is that if you're trying to film your own videos and you use a tool like Canva or another tool, you'll be able to add some kind of production value, but it will still be quite limited. Whereas what something like Story can do is we can actually help you to improve that production quality, which is really really useful. And we do that by having the right people in-house and using the right tools. So I mentioned the Adobe Video Suite. We have production people who at the top of their game. They really understand what they're doing. They really understand the programs as well and have access to all those tools and know how to use them. We're constantly investing in their training as well to make sure that they're equipped to do what clients need them to do. So that covers off quality. Calls to action are a big one. So sometimes we're not always sure, post on post, why we're doing something. And I suppose it is okay just to create dialogue with your audience. But my personal view is that you always want a next step. Like you always want something else there. So, for example, this video we'll break it down into multiple short videos that we'll use to drive people there. So the call to action in those shorter videos will be to actually click on the link to go to the longer video and check it out. Whereas in the long video, in this one, the call to action is going to be check out our website. We'll have a link to some of our offers, those sorts of things. And they're very specifically led for people who then take the time to watch this longer video, and things are resonating with them. So they want to have a conversation. They want to have a conversation with Story. So your call to action is really, really important. Now, one of the things in videos is it's difficult to actually, create links within the video, clickable links within the video. That's becoming more prominent on social. I mean, certainly in things like YouTube or systems like YouTube, you can include, pop-outs on the screen, which means that you can actually click on them and go to various, various sites, squeeze pages, other social content, blogs, vlogs, whatever it might be. However, we're talking more about social content, so that can be a little bit more difficult. I think as well, when we talk about some of the most popular forms of B2B social media marketing, so we think about Facebook, we think about LinkedIn, think about YouTube, those sorts of areas, there's very easy call to actions in there, and people go in, they'll read, they'll take the time. Whereas if we look at things like Instagram, that can be a bit harder, and it depends on the sort of company you are, to how you set up your Instagram account, to what sort of content you want out there. So, people who are going on Instagram, that's really visual, really about scrolling. So one, the videos and the actual content we produce, really, really important. But then so also is the commentary. So how are we going to get people from one place to the other? How do we actually take them from a post to a blog, or a post to a funnel page, or whatever it is we're trying to do? So we have to very carefully craft the CTA and actually leverage it. I think typically we don't want to pepper posts with CTAs. So we don't want 20 different things. I think I've always worked on the opinion from a communications point of view that if you just talk about one thing and make it really clear what you want people to do, you get a much better return, or much better activity from that specific post or email or whatever it is you're trying to produce. It's the reason that funnel pages exist. So rather than just putting everything on your website, you have a funnel page which doesn't talk about anything regarding other menu options, different things you can do. It's just literally has video content, written content, bios, testimonials, whatever, that all relate to the sale that you're trying to get, or whatever the CTA is you're trying to use with your audience base. But really, you're just trying to get them to do one thing, which is click on a button and go to the next stage and do whatever it is you need them to do. And I think content's a bit like that. We don't want too many crazy ideas, and we don't want too many different ideas. We just want the one CTA. So whether it's to drive people to a website or whatever it might be. I think once you get someone to a destination, though, that becomes very important then. Like, what is it they're going to do there? So, if you're trying to, like in this instance, if we're trying to connect with an audience and you want people to be driven to a contact page so they can actually get in touch with you, you've got to make sure that there is that kind of information on there and the link's not broken and those sorts of things. Otherwise, people just don't tend to want to engage, although they can obviously leave comments, but then you need to make sure you're looking at those comments and following them up, etc. So yeah, leveraging those CTAs is really important, and being really precise about what those CTAs are and that they do go to the right places is really important. So then creating conclusions and calls to action. So the good news is a lot of the conclusions and the calls to actions can actually come in the format of the post copy. So we create a video, create compelling messages, it's very branded. People can see you, personally see you, they can see your brand, see what you're talking about, and kind of engage with the content, right? Short, under 2.5 minutes or under 2 minutes. And we know the orientation, etc. But there's no CTA necessarily, in the video, other than us saying for literally like a second, hey, if you like this content, please click and we'll go to the comments and find and those sorts of actions, right? And so what we can do is with the content, we can kind of summarize. The post copy, I should say, is we can summarize the content. Or provide it as a conclusion with the CTA. So did you like what you hear? Did you think these points were interesting? If you want to find out more, how this works for your business, click here, do this, do that. And so we can be very precise with that. I think what we don't want to do in post content for a video especially is essentially summarize the video. I don't think that's particularly useful. I don't think audiences who are watching videos are necessarily going to read the content and just enjoy a summary. I think, if it's a 2-minute video or a minute video, it's not such a bad thing to be able to just watch it, go somewhere and click, and keep it really simple. But as well, we don't necessarily need CTA. Like I said, I know a lot of companies that prefer just to talk genuinely with their audiences about things that are going on right then in that particular month, the clients they've won, the work they're doing, whatever it might be. They just want a dialogue, with their audience, and they're very non-metrics focused about it. They're putting it out there, for the value to their audiences, and I think that's great. That's really admirable. However, if you do want more of a return on investment style marketing approach to this, you need to quantify what's happened with those. Obviously, then using a CTA helps to do that. So I don't think there's too much else I can add to this. I hope this was useful. If you did like it, please do like the post and leave a comment below, and we'll get back to you. And if you want to find out more about story content and how we can take your video ideas and create compelling content, we'd love to hear from you. There's going to be a link in the description area. Of course, there is, after just talking about CTAs, but there'll be a link there. Click on that, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks.